When you think of cities that are centers for creativity, New York, Los Angeles, or even Austin, Texas might come to mind. But why not Des Moines? When you stop to think about it, Des Moines has an incredibly vibrant arts scene. From the Civic Center to the Arts Center or the Botanical Garden, arts and culture is alive and well in central Iowa. But if you're a local artisan, where do you go to find an affordable space to develop and produce your creations? That's where Mainframe Studios enters the picture. Mainframe Studios is a nonprofit organization located on Keogh Way in downtown Des Moines. This space is a 36-year-old 5-story building that was originally a telephone company data center. Upon reopening in late 2017, Mainframe included 75 shareable studios on 3 of the 5 floors. Another floor of artists has recently finished construction, and now Mainframe is home to more than 131 creative spaces. Mainframe hosts regular First Friday events where the public is invited. Storyboard artists help the head of story create a visual representation of the animation's narrative. Storyboard artists translate the script and the director's vision into pictures. They produce a series of panels of images to plan the shots and ensure continuity between them. Storyboard artist Adam Van Wyk has over 20 years of experience creating storyboards for popular animated shows and films like Justice League, Batman Beyond, Minions, and The Secret Life of Pets.
So I do storyboards for animation, both 3D animation and traditional hand-drawn animation. And in the process of making an animated show, the storyboard comes right after the script. So I read the script, and then I come up with kind of a comic book of what the cartoon is going to look like. And the storyboard is what everybody else that's working on the production uses, so that even though there's up to hundreds of people working on it, we're all on the same page about what we want the cartoon to look like when it's finished. In my trophy cases here, I've got some stuff from some of the shows I like that I've worked on. So I've worked on Minions, Secret Life of Pets, Ice Age, Batman Beyond, Justice League. I've been at it for 20 years now, so Batman Beyond was the first show that I started on, and I do a lot of work for Warner Brothers, so a lot of the action adventure shows there, and some of the comedy ones too, like Scooby and Tom and Jerry. My big break is I went to college with Dan Povenmire, who was also a student at USC, and we both did comic strips for the student newspaper. And he was already in the business getting jobs on like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and he liked my art, and he started recommending me for jobs, and so that was like the first big break I got into doing storyboards for animation.
Commander of my Parademon army.
Oh, thanks, D-Train. Lord.
The reason I'm at Mainframe Studios is my other studio closed and got turned into apartments, and they're lovely apartments, but so I'm kind of the poster child for Mainframe Studios and why it's a cool idea and a cool thing for artists. Like the big idea of Mainframe, and I'm sure Siobhan can tell you this better, is that this will hopefully become a self-sustaining place for artists, and you know, it's not owned by somebody that might be like, oh, the property's worth more now, we're going to sell it and turn it into apartments or whatever. Like, the idea is this will always be a place for artists to be. The rent is relatively low, so encouraging as many people who want to be artists to be able to have a space to be creative. But I really enjoy the community spirit, and it's really a great benefit to be around other artists. You know, usually I just do little thumbnails right on the script, so little tiny drawings to start with that just get my ideas going. So I still draw with pen and paper first, and then I move over to the computer. The program that I use is called Storyboard Pro. It's from a Canadian company called Toon Boom, and a lot of the studios use it now. So I use this Cintiq, which is a monitor that, you know, I use a stylus and I can draw on there. So even though it is a computer, it feels kind of like traditional media. I have all kinds of influences. The reason I went to USC for school is I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and George Lucas went there, and I thought, well, maybe if I go there, I'll be as cool as George someday. You know, I've always loved comic books, so you know, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, and you know, I've been lucky enough to work with some of my favorite artists in the animation industry. I've been you know, lucky enough to, you know, work with Bruce Timm on, you know, Batman Beyond and Justice League, and then just all of Warner Brothers classic characters. So it's a lot of fun to draw Scooby and Tom and Jerry and all those guys. My work is almost all behind the scenes for animation. I've done very little you know, actual comic books. I think I've done 3. One of my relatives used to look at my thumbnails on my page and be like, okay, so if you do a drawing every 6 minutes, it'll take you this long to finish it. And as any artist knows, you can't really, you know, micromanage a drawing like that. You know, some drawings it's a minute, some drawings it's 2 hours, like I spent all morning on one drawing. But the overall work time is, if I get an act of a 21-minute animated episode, which is around 7 minutes of screen time, I get between 4 and 6 weeks to draw that act. Well, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we're not doing what we call the drink and draw right now. But the idea is that you just hang out, and if you want to bring a tasty beverage, you can. And the local version of Drink and Draw, the guy who started it, Sean Ike, like, he also was friends with a lot of the cosplayers in the area, so he would invite people in costume to come and pose, and then he would invite artists to come and draw. So it's kind of, you know, two fandoms mixing together. So it's always good to get life drawing experience, and it's great to have people come and you know, show off their cool costumes. The Drink and Draw, to my knowledge, was started by Dave Johnson, one of the artists that I was lucky enough to work with on, you know, Batman Beyond and Justice League. And he's got a pretty cool YouTube channel all about, you know, he just gets on with a couple of his friends, and they pick a random thing, and sometimes they have a really cool guest artist on, and, you know, they just have a tasty beverage and do some art. So it's a really fun thing.
Finally, we asked Adam professionally, what's his goal and dream project?
This might be kind of boring, but I kind of am living my goal. You know, like, like I said, I went to school to try to get into movies, and I really love television animation and feature animation, and like I said, I'm a huge comic book fan, so anytime I get to draw comic book characters, it's kind of a thrill. So I'm kind of living the dream.
Like, now can we no.
Well, I can't think of a specific piece of advice, but I mean, just the general cheerleading I've gotten all my life from my parents and my teachers and my family, because I know that going into art is probably scary for a parent to worry about, like, is this going to be something you can make a living at? And luckily everybody was always very supportive and let me take my shot, and again, very luckily, I'm able to do it.
To see more of Adam's work, visit these social media sites. We'll take a short break here before we get a glimpse into the art of narrative sculpture. Linda Lewis creates figures that reflect her penchant for people and the stories they tell using facial expressions, body positioning, and surface treatments. Her recent work explores the hidden parts of us, what we might be thinking, what we're made up of, and what surprises lay beyond our outward appearance. She has collectors throughout the United States and has exhibited extensively in the Midwest, West, and East Coasts.
I actually got a degree quite a while ago in education, but I also got a minor in art. And after I got out of college, I had to work because I had loans to pay. So for 35 years, I worked as a teacher in the Des Moines schools. And then after I knew that I could retire early, I actually decided to, while I had been working a little bit in clay, and anyway, I decided to do it full time. I had been working in my studio at home, which was lovely. It was small, but there was lots of light. But being an artist is very isolating. And since I make people, a lot of my inspiration comes from other people. So, I got a lot done at home, but I get a lot done here. So the great part about Mainframe is, first of all, you're around other artists of all kinds, and not just visual artists, but different kinds of artists. And the next thing is that a lot of artists end up having spaces in uncomfortable places where maybe they don't have access to something as simple as water or as simple as having a restroom close by. And so little things like that just make it make you more productive, make it more pleasant to work from. And the space, the way they designed it, was especially for artists. They left the cement the way it is, so it's easy to clean, little things like that. But the best thing is that I work with other artists. Well, I work in clay, and obviously you can see that I make figures. And they're called narrative sculptures because there's an idea behind it and a kind of a story. And I want to capture an idea or something perhaps that I want to express. And so a narrative sculpture is a perfect way to do it. So what I've been working on lately is doing a lot of scratching and drawing on the surface to help tell the story about whatever the piece is about. But I also have been working on, over the last maybe 1.5 to 2 years, on trying to describe maybe what's kind of the hidden parts of us, what makes us who we are, and what is it that makes us who we are? Why are you the way that you are and me the way that I am? A piece like this, where there are legs and they're bent and feet and whatever, a piece like this can take me up to 3 months. It takes a little while to construct, and then you have to clean it up, and anyway, there's a whole process to it. The pieces that you see in front of me, pieces like that usually take about 3 weeks to 4 weeks, depending on if we have room in the kiln and that kind of thing. Well, I think some of the responses that I've had that I love the most is that, especially when they come into my booth, like if I'm at an art festival, they'll come into my booth and someone will stand there and just keep on looking and looking and looking and looking. And so usually I give them some space, and a lot of times they'll say, I am so touched, and then they'll talk about the piece, how it relates to them. And that's exactly why I make these pieces, so that they see a part of themselves in it and they understand more maybe about themselves because of that. Yeah, well, it usually starts from rolling out a slab of clay. So all these pieces you see are hollow inside. And so they have to be formed in parts, and it's all about timing so that the clay won't slump and the piece won't fall over. So all the parts are done hollow, and usually in slabs or sometimes in coils. Some people are familiar with coil because maybe they made a coil pot when they were young. And it's just kind of an enlarged version of a lot of the things maybe you learned in art class. And so I have some tools with rounded ends, or I have what we call a rib, that I go in and once it gets to a certain spot, I shape the piece. So I can do the bums and put in the knees and do all kinds of things, so it gives shape to a piece. And then there's a process of letting it get to a point where I can carve on it or I can draw on it and make kind of the marks that I want that will continue the narrative. And then it has to be cleaned up again, and then I use a lot of underglazes, so I actually put them on the greenware, and then it's fired, and it goes up to about 1975 degrees. I take it out, I put maybe more underglaze and parts that maybe needed more, so I do layers. And then I may fire it again, then I take it out and I put a copper wash on it and wipe it off in the places that I don't want it to be dark or like dark brown or black. So what it does is it falls in all my etchings and my intentional little scrapes and things, and it also makes the color come more alive too. But I've also won Best of Show, Best of 3D Work, Best of Sculpture. Iowa State bought a piece for me, and it's in the Christian, well, it's been displayed in the Christian Peterson Gallery up in Morrell Hall a few times, and it's been actually their collection. It's in the Margaret Sloss Center for Women, and that's where it remains, but then they often pull work together and do an exhibit. And so last year they pulled my work for an exhibit about body image and kind of where that, kind of the roots or the history of body image among women. Well, I used to be in From Our Hands in Des Moines, so you could have seen it there, but now I'm starting like a studio gallery here at Mainframe, and that's what will be in Studio 433. But you can also see it when you travel to Michigan in Saugatuck Douglas area at Button Gallery. You can see it in Dubuque at Outside the Lines, and in Galena. There's also a gallery in Park City, Utah, one in Lanesboro, Minnesota, in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska. And then occasionally you'll see work at a gallery in Kansas City too. And then you can go to the Des Moines Art Festival. You know, that I'm never assured that I will get in because you have to apply every year, but I am in this year, which is 2021. So, and I've been in the last few years as well. So, I like the pieces that, like I've read a poem that is, or a book, and they have a statement that has really affected me. And then I like to take that idea and think, how would I represent that visually? I've had kids and I have grandkids, and then we're around lots of kids that are middle to high school kind of. And there's usually a couple people anyway that are in my life that they're kind of the people that like to disappear. They don't like to get a lot of attention to themselves, which is sort of me. And sometimes you just want to kind of disappear and watch what's going on. Anyway, so I made this piece because she's kind of looks a little hesitant, and she looks a little, maybe a little timid. But really what she's doing is she's trying to observe other people and what they're doing. I would love to do an installation about, do some research about certain people who maybe people don't know much about, but who really made other people's lives better. And trying to represent what they stood for and what they did. And then I'm always thinking of something I could do. So, and actually when if I think of a dream project, I usually try to figure out how I'm going to do that.
We asked Linda, how could I get into sculpting and learn about clay?
I think one thing about clay is that most people don't have a kiln hanging around. So the best thing to do, like Des Moines Arts Center has classes in ceramics. I usually teach a fall class in ceramic sculpture and in narrative sorts of things. And I suggest doing it that way, you know, take classes. A lot of times you'll you'll have the class, but then there'll be open studio times, and that's how I got started. I was an art minor in college, but I was more of a painter. Did a lot of watercolors, and I did some acrylics. And but after our kids grew up and moved out, I took a class at the Arts Center in ceramics because in college there was never enough room in that class, and so I didn't get a chance to take it there. So I thought, well, I'll take it now. I'm just really grateful that I got to a place in my life where instead of saying, oh, it's too late for me to do this, this is something I've always wanted to do. I wanted to do some facsimile of art, and I knew I didn't want to do crafts. I wanted to do something that had a lot of meaning to it. And so I am just grateful that I'm able to do this. I have a place to do it. I've been very lucky and blessed to be able to get into galleries and shows and that kind of thing. So I have a place to actually let other people enjoy it and hopefully purchase. So.
To see more of Linda's work, visit these social media sites. Thanks for watching this episode of Movement at Mainframe on NC22. In the following weeks, we'll be featuring more Des Moines artists and their unique talent. For more information on the artists, visit mainframestudios.org.